All right. Thank you and welcome, James and my dear friend William. So, we're talking about employee engagement, employee experience, and effecting change, right? And winning cultures in our organization. Maybe I'll have the two of you speak briefly, give us your opening comments on the topic, and then we can get into the questions, and then I will get some questions, comments as well from inside the room and then from online as well. So James, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Hello? Okay. Thank you very much, Anna. And I want to start my brief with a story in the Bible. I think that Abraham is one of the people who obeyed God and they said he was righteous. And I think he reacted to change in such a way that some of us, or most of us, would not do. When God said, move to a land you don't know the people, you don't know what to expect. And he took his wife and somebody and moved. Then he went to establish himself somewhere with his descendants. A time came, they moved to Egypt because there was famine in their land and they had to go and buy food. Eventually, they stayed there. Along the line, they forgot that they were not from Egypt and they needed to go back. They never remembered. So God has to cause them to become slaves. They put hard labor on them. And then they were forced to go back. So what I'm just trying to say is that the way the world is moving, things are changing. But some of us are not ready to change. And COVID came to force us to change. Or COVID came to prepare us for the changes that are ahead. And I think COVID is just one and the tip of the iceberg. Okay. And I also want to add that in most organizations, or almost all organizations, everybody wants to have a good culture, or we have written values that are very good. The only challenges we have is the implementation. The leaders are not ready to invest in it. They are not prepared to live. It's as if the laws are made for the employees and the lower people to exhibit. Now, if we all recognize that a well-engaged employee will improve our performance, our profitability for the organization, we'll behave differently. And top management will give it its commitment for it to happen. Until we have seen the importance of that, we will always gather and talk about employee engagement or good culture. But if we don't get involved in putting it in place and managing it throughout, it will not work. So leaders we must ourselves demonstrate the commitment and do appropriate investment into the area of culture and employee engagement for us to realize the benefits fully. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Great, James. So, hello? Waking? Hello? So, storytelling mood. During the break, I met Irabna and I said, Irabna, do you remember 3 years ago, you asked me to write an article for the magazine. And in writing, I knew that what I was writing may not get published. And true to my word, it didn't get published. And what did I write about? I simply said, we are getting into the era where policies will no longer matter, and that it's more about practice. It didn't get published. 3 years down the line, what do we see? Practices because we are bringing the human back. Colleagues, fact is that, whether we like it or not, 100% of our colleagues are human beings. 100% of our customers are human beings. So bring the human back into the organization. It is human beings that form culture. It is human beings that determine practices. It is the human beings that you and I serve. It is human beings that make up an organization. So get your people practices right, and you are in business. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, William. So, James, you mentioned, and something that's very dear to my heart, you mentioned that sometimes leaders find it difficult, or leaders need to embody the culture. Employees need to see them embodying the culture. Why do you think that sometimes it's difficult for that to happen? And how can we help leaders to do that?
I think it's a vision. It's a matter of seeing the impact culture can have on the organization. So like Dan mentioned about figures. And he also said something that HR, from now going, HR should be at the forefront. And that tells me something. Where does it start? Who starts the organization? Is it people or it is the money? It's a human being who brings out the idea. But in most organizations, HR is almost the last thing to think about until now. And from where we sit as Lene, HR consultant, we liaise with almost all organizations, and we see a lot of things, especially in Ghana and Nigeria. So a lot of organizations need help, especially our leaders. So we need the leader to demonstrate their commitment to the culture. That is it, but they don't have that commitment. It is like the way in Ghana, legislation is made, and the citizens are expected to follow the legislation. Let's say a driver on the road who doesn't relate to a minister or a big man gets to cross the red line or drive on the shoulders. When they get you either pay money or you go to the police station. Now, another person who knows maybe IGP sends a driver and the driver gets caught. It's only a matter of phone call and the person will pass. So the laws are made for some people in the organization. There's no inclusiveness. So they make the law for the employees to live by, but they themselves don't live by it. So you will not get the culture being involved. You will not get commitments from everybody. So one, we need to see that the impact of culture on the money aspect of the business. Because when the employees are satisfied, they are happy with their work, and they are committed and involved mentally and emotionally, it has an impact on the client, how they serve clients. It will bring about client satisfaction. Now, when clients are satisfied, they will come more and give referrals. At the end of the day, your sales will increase. That is leading to profitability. But if you don't see the chain, and you only see investing in culture or investing in HR as an expense instead of an investment that you get returns, that is why the leaders are short. So one, commitment in investment, and one in commitment in demonstrating the life, the culture I expect them to live by.
Absolutely. So it's like sometimes, most of the time when you enter an organization, one of the first things you see is a nice, board with their values. So we're customer obsessed, we have respect for each other, trust. and all of that. But when you really delve into the organization, is what it is. If you have a customer-obsessed organization and I enter your organization, and the first person I meet is the receptionist, they say, he's not even trying to look at your face. And that person, people keep complaining about that receptionist, but then over and over when you go, the person is still there and displaying that behavior. It means that senior leadership has heard the feedback, but is not doing anything about it. So it also talks to accountability.
Exactly.
And holding people accountable to these are the things that we've said collectively that is going to guide us in this organization. And so we have to hold people accountable. Well, first of all, leaders, we have to hold ourselves accountable, and then we have to, hold our employees accountable as well. All right, my dear friend William, what does a positive and engaging work culture, we've talked about winning culture, how does that look like in an organization?
Wow. I guess it depends on the particular culture and the particular organization. But for me, first and foremost, remember that organizations are set up to achieve shareholder value, basically. And so if the shareholder value is being achieved, for me, that's take one. Take two is when you check all your matrices, wellness, you're checking engagement levels, you're checking how colleagues, for instance, are empowered to take up activities and roles that may seem to be above them. So I'll give you an example. An engaged teller, for instance, will not just take a check, look at it and say, this is not, the date is wrong, so it cannot be cashed. The engaged teller will try to solve the problem. The engaged teller will go a step ahead to do what ideally is not in their role profile.
Yeah.
That, for me, is an engaged colleague.
Yeah.
An engaged colleague and an engaged team, an engaged organization, straight away demonstrates productivity on the other side. And how do we, for me, going ahead, how do we achieve all this? The key point is co-creation of culture. There is the maxim that culture is determined from the top.
Yeah.
Yes and no. It may be determined from the top, but how will you achieve success? It's through the colleagues.
Yeah.
So for me, I would view it as a co-creation exercise where the colleagues come together and we say, of course, it's not in a big room like this. You have champions. There are ways of doing this. And we all come together and say, look, this is what our customers want.
Yeah.
For us to achieve shareholder value and for us to meet the problems, for us to be able to solve the problems for which we've been established, because every organization has been established to solve a problem. That's how you make money. If you've been established and you're not solving problems, then I'm wondering why you are there.
Right.
So once we go that route, then we begin to ask ourselves, what kind of values, what kind of beliefs, what kind of behaviors must we have to be able to achieve this aim?
Yeah.
Once you get that buy-in from the colleagues,
Yeah.
and they feel a part of the culture that we've all agreed, then you can have, for instance, a junior member calling out a senior member that this is not what we agreed.
Yeah.
And so you're building a culture of trust.
Absolutely.
You should be able to call out a senior member.
Yeah.
And vice versa. And that way, we build together. And the end thereof is productivity,
Yeah.
as we see.